Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Hollis. I'm doing my presentation on the Japanese Yakuza for Anthropology 125. To start off the presentation, I'm going to discuss about who are the Yakuza. The Yakuza, for the most part, are known as one of the most powerful organizations in the world. Uh, they're widely known through many countries, through many civilizations, as they have had interactions with the cartel, uh, likely modern day United States criminal organizations or past criminal organizations like the mafia. Uh, they're, for the most part, ran by different families. They can extend for generations, or let's say if it dies out, another family would grow with it or grow from it. It has a strong presence with Japan and many other countries, for which is unlike any other. Mostly in Japan, you'll likely know who the Yakuza are, or you'll be able to tell who and which one. You could point out which ones if you're actually native within Japan. The local, for the most part, will tell you the difference or can tell. As for the Yakuza culture, one of the bigger aspects of the Yakuza would be their continuous hierarchy, from ranging from the boss, head boss, all the way down to the underlings. There's a variety of branches. There's also a major boss in the middle between all the families that for the most part, does negotiations between all the families. And these bosses will work on their own ways. They would have their different branches of second command, their bankers, their their own underlings. Their each different layers would do their own job, and for the most part, would be like a career for each of these men, each of these people, and and their culture requires respect. The Yakuza culture requires respect. And if they do not provide respect, consequences will be implemented, whether it's through death, whether it's through the removal of a limb, cutting off of a pinky finger is one of them. One of the other aspects is their tattoos within their culture, within the Yakuza culture. Tattoos are, as shown by the top picture right here, is completely massive. It could spread throughout their entire body. It could just extend on their back. It could be a creature that accurately represents themselves, like a dragon, a fish, whatever animal that generally represents, or their deities, gods, whatever would represent themselves. However, these originally were a mark of punishment by authorities, for which the Yakuza see it as themselves, see it as their personalities, and they claimed it as their own, as their culture, rather than seeing it as shame. Now, as for when they originated, the Yakuza originated back in 1912, as one from the Hatamoto Yako. However, present day Yakuza actually do not see themselves as the Hatamoto Yako. They actually identify themselves as the Machiyako. The Machiyako were actually their historic enemies back in the day, as they saw them as a better representative of who or how the organization runs. Through the basis of they're the Robin Hood figures. They fight against the leaders of the land, the samurai, etc. They did not, but however, they did not appear until about 100 years after the death of Chobi Banzuini, who essentially influenced many present-day Yakuza. He was the leader of the Yoko, and went to investments like the many families that do today through like gambling to make profit and by helping others, which is dependent on the person, of course. Uh, that's just what Chobi did. He was known as a very strong figure back in the day, that which many present-day Yakuza man or woman would advocate to be, and died fighting multiple men while in the shower, while in the restroom, ending up with a spear at hand, and then dying by the hand of a samurai, an honorable death. At least that's what it's foretold. It's kind of iffy of whether or not that actually happened. Now, how did they become influential? The Yakuza became massively influential back when they from their early development, as their original goal was to fight against the samurai, fight against the power of the land. As they developed influence within the little towns that they originated from, as the commoners, the farmland, the merchants saw them as heroes, basically in-town heroes. And for generations, they've added on to that. They've put themselves into the political atmosphere. They rooted themselves, saw themselves as the pretty much political leaders. Their influence was so strong enough that they would threaten current political leaders, and if they do not abide, they'll threaten removal, which was likely successful throughout the generations, as they had many men, many resources to do so. And with this public control, with this political control, they were able to stay in the public. It was rapidly known who was which or which. That's through the previous slide, as shown, or as I've stated previously. Like through the pins in the top right, that would show whether or not someone's a Yakuza. Yakuza would wear that pin, wear nice clothes, and a commoner would be able to point them out easily. Police likely almost guaranteed know who, if it is a Yakuza, but likely won't do anything about it, even though it is technically illegal. And they wouldn't do anything about it due to the power the Yakuza have. And the Yakuza likely wouldn't have received any punishment besides a slap on the wrist. In the bottom right picture is the Justice Minister, Kishu Tanaka. Kishu was, for the most part, called out due to was investigated for his involvement with the Yakuza. His involvement with the Yakuza likely would have been being paid and allowed policies to go by that which would benefit the Yakuza. He had to step down. He fought that for a while, but didn't work out even with the power of the Yakuza. Caught too much attention. As for the entertainment presence for the Yakuza has had a strong presence in the film industry, and then eventually leading to video games, modern day video games like the Yakuza franchise. Films containing a Yakuza storyline struck with the younger audience due to the violent and dramatic aspects, intense fighting, killing left and right, macho-ness of the lead character or fellow characters. It would almost fantasize the Yakuza lifestyle as like the everyday cowboy or the bandit, lead bandit of a movie, and certain plot lines would have the main character tossed between regular lifestyle, family, love, or continue their rugged lifestyle. Now, the Yakuza, of course, with their power, have not just stayed in Japan or within the areas surrounding it. It has also extended their power towards the United States, as has been brought up through multiple cases, like the Akawaki versus Sanchez case, for which a victim has claimed that the Yakuza terrorized them and has threatened gang warfare, which in the United States is a very big deal, naturally anywhere, but for a Japan organization to have an influence extending all the way to Hawaii, the Middle Pacific, is representative of how powerful they can be. To even threaten gang warfare is rapid. And within the other case of US versus Takahashi, the defendant was accused of having affiliation with the Yakuza through the provided evidence. Now, while in Japan, a person is likely or possibly able to get away with being Yakuza, with representation or with the power within the nation of Japan and influence. While in the United States, these two cases were able to at least have some control or understanding and willing to prosecute those that attempt to be to show their colors of being within the Yakuza. Now, this is the top right image. The man with the rocket launcher is a boss, one of the bosses of the Yakuza, of selling weapons in the United States, that which are not necessarily legal, like the rocket launcher you can see here. It was explosives in other areas outside of the United States, likely could get away with it. The United States, likely the same here too, but if it's up in the air or it's easily noticeable, he is likely to suffer the consequences of simply being Yakuza. Now, nearly 100 years, hundreds of years since the existence of the Yakuza, and about 100 years since the development of inspiration since around like the Mafia, the Yakuza. What is their future? What does the Yakuza do from here on out, since the pandemic, since continuous advocacy of attempting to stop them? Well, Japan has tried to imply and stop organized crime activity, which involves the Yakuza. Yakuza is almost entirely organized crime. However, the process seems to be a never-ending fight, as policies, and political parties seem to continue support for the Yakuza. The conservative party or right-wing party, for the most part, was showing advocacy for policies that would be beneficial for the Yakuza, rather than attempting to halt or reduce the powers. And policies just didn't seem to work at all. Never applied a force against the organizations themselves. And even then, leaders that would stand up against it like the mayor of Nagasaki. They would have shown advocacy to reduce the powers of the Yakuza presence. However, sadly, the mayor was then assassinated while also being replaced. And the replacement supposedly expects to, or has put the implication or promise that they will reduce the power of the Yakuza, but that is yet to be seen. And their power with Japan is expected to be continuous for generations to come. And yes, it is likely that Japan will not be out of the Yakuza era for years on out, as the death of Mayor Hitoshi Matoshima deaths like himself will likely continue. Representatives of anti-Yakuza within Japan politics will likely suffer similar consequences, or if more works out, politicians who get pointed out, like the previous public justice, excuse me, right here, Justice Minister Kishu Tanaka, hopefully eventually politicians like himself will be thrown out or gaslighted to the point to where they'll have to step down. Their power will likely never stop or be limited. I've seen through articles that their power has been reduced, but is still there and is still growing while continuing. And likely with the representation through entertainment, it's likely became a popular thing, like the cowboy, like the other fantasy aspects, to get the tattoos, to get the power of a Yakuza boss, banker, second in lead. It likely created a fantasy for that aspect. And yeah, that is my Yakuza presentation for my final China-Japan file for Aaron Hollis, Anthropology 125. And thank you again, and have a great summer. Bye-bye.